Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will be delivering this lovely talk, React Native Performance, 1000 updates a second, reacting like native. So, a little bit about me. I am called Nick Robertson. I am a software engineer here at Smarkets. I have been here for 18 months, and whilst I have been here, I have been working in the front-end team, predominantly the React web app, as well as React Native mobile app. So Robin did give a pretty thorough introduction, but a little bit about the app in particular. So Smarkets is primarily a web-based binary option financial exchange, so it allows you to bet against other people. Our official relaunch was in March 2018. With the help of Theodo, we got it out within 3 months. It was incredible. Since then, we've increased our daily active users by 180%, our monthly active users by 144%. We matched feature parity with the website by October last year, and we also introduced some really kind of nifty mobile-specific features like fingerprint lock and other such things. And at the time of this talk, we are the highest rating betting app in the UK, Malta, and I think Ireland. So that's pretty good. So you're thinking, wow, he's just talked about how great it is. So what? Who cares? Smarkets is a great app. It wasn't always great, though. It took a while to get there. So this is something we received at the end of last year. It was a bit of feedback we got through our feedback form. Website is good. App performance is slow and stutters. Needs a performance overhaul. Thank you, Alex, a Smarkets iOS user. I loved this feedback. So we had just completed a Redux migration, and everything felt fine for us on our flagship phones when we were testing it. But what we didn't think about is the user in the older device. And his performance was sluggish and slow. And I don't think it's okay to say, oh, that's okay, here's an older device. We're using React Native, we can let those kind of customers go. We really need to focus on those customers as well. They've come to expect a very high kind of standard of animation-rich and kind of quick and responsive applications. And saying, because we're using React Native, we can't do that, that's not good enough. It's like, but it does kind of pose the question, can we do it with React Native? I'm getting a lot of frowns right now. This is a React Native conference. I think we can do it with React Native, and we have. Cool. So I would love just to kind of jump in and start talking about performance, but I feel like we're going to take a step back and talk about like a systematic approach to how to approach performance, because I could just give you tips and tricks and say, oh, here's a pure component, use it everywhere, but that's a bad tip, don't follow that. But essentially, we kind of need to take a step back and come up with a systematic approach so we can do anything and detect performance issues in any application, not just a Smarkets application. So first, we need to benchmark our solution. It's where are we starting from? Simple enough. Then we're going to identify the performance issues. Then after that, we're going to try and fix the issues and re-benchmark and see if we've improved. Admittedly, you will actually go between 3 and 4 quite a lot. Your first fix generally does not work. So it's actually quite hard to measure performance. And actually, there's a really good talk I recommend given by our colleague Daniel James, who gave it last year here, called Swift Without Swift. He goes into a lot more detail than I do, so if you want more detail, definitely check that talk out. It's on YouTube. So the main kind of metrics we can use to measure React performance is frames per second. In React Native, we're aiming for 60 frames per second. Janky frames, which is the number of frames which didn't make that render target and were dropped. CPU, GPU usage, which I don't think is a particularly useful metric given the wide range of devices we have to target. Load time, so just time for taking to get resources. It may be local resources or it could be network resources. And then renders, which is really what I'm going to be focusing on tonight, is kind of how often you render, the wall time of the renders, and kind of how we can visualize that is usually through flame graphs. So these are the tools I want to talk about in particular. So we've got the React Native Performance Monitor. I think everyone will be familiar with that. React Profile and Interactions API. Console.log, I'm not going to talk about that, but we all know it exists and is amazing. Why did you render? And Firebase Performance Monitoring. So entry point for all applications. We found that something is a bit slow. We're not too sure why. We're going to enable the Show Performance Monitor. We have our RAM, our JavaScript heap, and our views. I would say these are not very useful metrics, but they are there if you want to use them. The two things we're most interested in here are the UI thread and the JavaScript thread. So I would say, unless you're doing animations, an incredibly complex layout, it will be the JavaScript thread 9 times out of 10. But this is just a sanity check to make sure you're not looking for a bottleneck where it doesn't exist. So quick show of hands, who here has actually used the React DevTools profiler? Okay, a fair few, good. You'll enjoy this then. So if you haven't, it's quite similar to the Performance tab in Chrome Developer Tools. So the React tools have a few advantages, and they are kind of optimized for React, so you get a few extra features, and it's available for anyone using React Native 0.57 or 16.5 or higher. So it's kind of like I would go to my first go-to location when I'm trying to work out what's wrong with my components. I've got a JavaScript issue. So to start it, you would go to the issue area in the app, you would go to the Profiler tab, and you would hit record and do what you think is causing the issue, and you'll be provided a flame graph. I'm going to talk a little bit more about kind of what the React developer tools look like, but to do that, I have created like a basic application just so we can understand what's going on in an example case. So it's a pretty simple kind of container. The container has an internal counter state which starts at 0. I have a start button and a reset button. The start button starts the counter going up, and the reset button stops it and resets the counter to 0. When we start counting, we mount a optimized component and a poorly optimized component. The poorly optimized component is just a regular component, but it has got a really heavy render function. And the optimized component is a regular text view in a pure component wrapper. Cool. So before I talk about what's actually on here, you kind of have to understand that React does work in two phases, the render phase and the commit phase. The render phase determines what changes need to be made. It calls the render method, then compares the result with the previous render. The commit phase is when the React actually applies the changes, and also calls a few lifecycle methods, but that's not really that important at this point. So the profiler kind of collects all of the commits, it collects all the performance into a commit, which you can see in the top right in red. Here there are 7 commits. We can see black is the currently selected commit. We've got yellow bars showing how long each commit took to render, and blue bars are shorter and they suggest it was a quicker commit. Yellow suggests that it missed the window and there was a janky frame. And then I can move on to the flame graph. The flame graph is what is in the center here. It shows you all of the components which are currently mounted, and anything which is in color is something which changed in that commit and rendered. So you know in which commit what components changed based on the color, and the color shows you how long it took, and the length shows you the relative amount of time it took to do it. So in this, we can see that my example component re-rendered, and on the very left I have what is showing the state here. On the mid-right, I've got the well-optimized component, and the bright yellow massive component is the poorly optimized component. Cool, so what can we do with this? So normally on the right-hand side, we would just see the render duration, but if we click on it, we can drill down to a per component level, and we can see how many renders there have been, what the states are, what the props are, and you also zoom in on that component to see kind of more of the children more clearly. And what's great about that is once you've selected a component, you can go through your commits and quite easily see what has changed at each point. So here we can see that the counter is being incremented on the right-hand side, so we know that that is causing the re-render. But we can also see that the poorly optimized component on the right-hand side is being re-rendered every single time the counter is incremented, which is inefficient and non-performant. If we had a much larger component tree, which is probably natural. This is a very basic app with 2 screens. We probably want to use the rank chart view. It very quickly shows us what kind of component is the slowest to render in this commit. And using that, we can go, okay, this is our biggest bottleneck in this commit. Let's look at this and how can we optimize it. Then we found the component we don't like. We can then check if it's a one-off case or if in every single commit it takes a long time to render. So the length of the bars here aren't just the length it took, but it's actually relative to its commit it took place in. So if it took place amongst a lot of other work, the bar would be smaller relative to the others, even if the number was the same. This is the kind of bit I'm quite excited about. It's still experimental, but it's very, very helpful. It's the Interactions API. You can associate actions you've done within Redux or setting state with an API, so you can quickly determine what has caused each commit in your profiler. So this links across, so you can see I've got my start button, my increment of the counters, and a reset button at the end. So I can click on these, go across to the commit view, see the flame graph, and I can hop between the two and quickly work out what has caused each thing. So if you want to try that, I'd recommend it, but definitely check out the GitHub first because it is experimental, it's still changing. But currently what you do is you give it a name, you give it date.now or performance.now if you're using a web app, and then you pass in an arrow function which wraps around what you're trying to measure the performance of. Okay, so we found the component which is broken. What are we going to do with it? Well, we can use console.debug or the console.log, but I quite like the package why did you render. It replaces why did you update. It tells you exactly why your component updated. And usually it's because you haven't done your pure component or your should you update correctly, but it will kind of give you a hint to what to look to if you're not too sure and it's not clear from your diagram in the previous kind of flame graph view. Okay, that was the DevTools profiler. So that's kind of everything I've told you about so far has been mainly about using it in development. We actually do a bit of performance tracking in production as well. So we use Firebase performance monitoring, and I highly recommend it because it gets you kind of performance metrics which you can measure over time with real-world users. So you've got automatic traces which come as part of the package, like average start times, network tracking, and other fundamental metrics. And with those, you can build up a picture of where your bottlenecks of the app are mainly network related. We've been using traces to work out when startup times happen, or how long it takes for a startup to occur. And we found out with a custom trace that actually Android users have a 4 times worse time to interaction than iOS users. And we've been able to use inline requires and some optimizations of our network calls to bring that down to equality. So that's been pretty impressive. Okay, so I think that's all of the tools I want to talk about. So now I think you probably have enough tools to kind of go out and explore your own kind of problems. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the problems we faced at Smarkets and how we fixed them. So on the right-hand side is what we call our event screen. It's our kind of fundamental part of our app, is where most of our users spend their time and can place their bets. So we have at the highest level, we have what's called an event, which could be something such as Brexit. We have markets which belong to an event. You can have multiple markets. So for example, a market could be the year of departure. When are we actually going to leave the EU? That's not me encouraging it. The contracts, we have multiple contracts. So for this example, year of departure could be 2019, 2020, 2021, and people will trade on that. So the way we load all of this in is we call a REST API. We load it into our Redux state, and then we have a lot of live updates coming in through a WebSocket stream. So you can see all of the updates come on the right-hand side. And to put this into context, this is probably 0.1% the traded volume of the Grand National. So this is quite a small event, but still the kind of updates are pretty constant, pretty frequent. So yeah, we're using Redux, and it's quite a big state. So we've got 400 action types, 600 selectors, 200 connected components, 41 reducers, and 22 middlewares. It's massive, except that. We have found that a lot of our performance issues have been related to Redux. I wouldn't say that Redux is not performant. I would just say it's very easy to write code in Redux which is not performant. So, first piece of advice, everyone will give it to you if you're using Redux. Memoize your selectors. That doesn't mean go crazy and memoize every single selector. Find the expensive ones and determine whether or not it's necessary to memoize them. Essentially, we use reselect. But there are a lot more options out there. You can use memoize1 or the Lodash memoize function. But the main thing is to look for selectors where they are creating new objects by reference, or if it is an incredibly expensive expensive selector function, which is kind of quite expensive to do something, such as sorting or other such functions. I don't really have time to go into the exact intricacies of it, but I'd say that kind of it's very important to understand how to share selectors with props across multiple components, but the documentation does a really good job of describing it, so I'd recommend checking that out. Cool. So we've memoized part of our selectors. Normalize your state. So usually your state would look something a little bit like on the left-hand side, where things are nested within the things the parent they belong to. When we normalize it, each type of data gets its own table in the state. And each data table is an object where we have the ID of each object is used as the key, and the object itself is stored at that key. And then any reference to a data object is then stored with a reference to that key. So the reason we do this is really to benefit from the kind of memoization of our selectors, as well as optimizing for state reads rather than the state writes. Cool. Question we always come up with when we're building with Redux and connecting components is, where do you actually connect? Do you want to connect to the top or at the bottom? Who thinks you should connect at the top? Great, I don't need to give this talk anymore. So we often find ourselves actually kind of tempted to connect at the top because we're iterating with a map, and it makes it a bit easier kind of to write our selectors, and there's less boilerplate. But actually, in this case, in the worst case scenario, a change to a single item can cause a re-render of every item in that list, which is not particularly performant. Whereas if we connect every single child and give it the exact part of state it needs to render, we also do less renders in general and less unnecessary renders, as well as not having to re-render the parent when it re-renders. To change this approach, you need to kind of pass the key IDs in and connect each component to the state it needs and nothing else. So when I say connect minimal state, give it absolutely nothing more than it needs and primitive types if possible. Cool. This one I think should be really obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Break down your components. Just because a component all has the same ID doesn't mean it should be its own component. So for example, in our application on the right-hand side, the yellow boxes, they re-render rapidly, maybe 4 or 5 times each second, whereas the rest of the data in the white box won't change at all for your entire session. So it doesn't make sense, even though they share the same ID, to keep them in the same component. You break it down further, so the re-render is doing less. Cool. Sorry, I'm firing through this quickly. So if you have a lot of actions firing in quick succession, and they're impacting similar parts of the store, definitely look into using Redux batched actions. It reduces actions under a single subscriber notification, which means you don't get multiple re-renders happening in quick succession. You don't necessarily have to use this library. You can do it in other ways manually implementing it, but we found this was the easiest one. And secondly, if you are using a lot of the same actions in a batcher, it suggests that you haven't kind of written your actions correctly and you should probably reconsider pluralizing that action so it can handle multiple payloads. This one's quite simple. Don't put it in Redux. Redux is not inherently slow, but it is slower than local state. So if you have a piece of state which doesn't need to be in Redux, don't put it in Redux. Just keep it local. It doesn't make sense to put it there if it doesn't belong there. So for example, if you had some kind of highlighter which showed when a component was selected, you don't need to put that in Redux. Just keep it in the local state. No one else needs to know about it. Cool. Live data optimizations. I think as engineers, we suffer this issue that we think if it can be optimized, we should optimize it, and we'll keep on chasing this throughput or render time, and we forget actually what the end user wants. And we just have to ask ourselves, do they actually benefit from this many updates? We might be able to handle 200 updates a second, but can a user understand 200 updates a second? The reality is probably not. So actually, it's quite beneficial to throttle your updates outside of Redux state, outside of the React component tree, and then pass them in slower in a throttled batched approach. And we do that at Smarkets to handle our prices, and it looks something like this. I'm very happy with that. Nice. I can't talk about every kind of performance optimization available in this presentation, but here's kind of just a short list of things you could also look into if you were kind of tried everything I'd done and nothing had worked. These are also quite good, so looking into native animations, the interaction manager, inline requires, skeleton loading, and network call aggregation. So to conclude, benchmark to determine current performance, find your issues, fix your issues, and benchmark again. It's that simple. That's me done. So thank you very much.